Record. Hello and welcome once again to Beyond the Physical Summit with me, your host, Sitara. I've got a beautiful guest who has just recently dropped into my orbit by divine alignment, Miss Sydney Campos.
Oh,
Sydney is a visionary. She is a psychic energy healer, embodiment facilitator, and best-selling author of The Empath Experience, What to Do When You Feel Everything. I love that. She's the founder of the Embodied Ascension Academy, co-founder and chief strategy officer of Ascend, and host of the Visionary Souls podcast. Sydney is devoted to creating heaven on earth in all moments, and since 2012, she has guided thousands of visionaries globally in embodying their true selves and powerfully living their purpose. She's a sought after expert in the fields of embodiment, sexuality, intuition, and leadership. She's also been featured in Forbes, Mind Body Green, Refinery 29, Bustle, Pure Wow, and New York Magazine. Wow, Sydney, it sounds like you have been super busy, and I am so honored to have you here with us today. Thanks for
oh,
joining.
it's such a pleasure. You're such a light and you just feel so familiar. Like we've had a lot of lifetimes and it's so fun to see you again.
Yeah, same. I agree. I want to just right off the bat just speak to the synchronicities that we had at the first time that we got on a phone call. It was one of the first, I would say one of the first two times in my life I felt like I was on the phone with like a version of myself as far as a female claiming the word psychic. Let's just say that in and of itself, because that's a whole shebang. And once we got to talking, realized we had very, very similar paths. So I'm really excited to see what comes up today. And is there anything, just to start, that's like top of mind, top of heart that's been bubbling for you lately?
I'm just having all kinds of Atlantean council reunions these days. So I feel that energy very present and strong with you. And it was very strong in the call I had this morning. And phew, I just feel chills downloading. It's like we're back. We're back on Earth at this time. I think everyone listening to this transmission, to this summit, called to gravitate in this field and this kind of resonance, it's you've been called to come into this life to remember these gifts and these abilities and these superpowers that you have from many other lifetimes living in advanced societies where Earth was a very different experience. And we have this memory. We have a cellular DNA and consciousness memory encodement of what it's like to live in an advanced, thriving society where everyone is supported and where we have incredible expressions of high technology and just brilliant creativity and advancement on all levels, and also where everyone's really taken care of and supported to do their soul purpose, to do their passion more so, and where everyone is really evolved in their spirituality as well. And then there's some traumas and some lessons we've had also in those lifetimes, and we're here to really do some major alchemy together through, I believe, finding each other again like this and relating and learning, remembering, integrating, and deciding what is the world we're here to create now. Like, I always say, what is the world we're here to create that we wish existed? That's what we're here for. And so I love the premise of this summit of bridging these dimensions of business and vision, but all from this very, I would say, embodied and also intuitively attuned perspective. Because where we're headed now, this Aquarian age, whatever you want to call it, just like ascending into higher dimensions, we got to bring our full selves forth. It's like not just the mind, but the whole body, the whole spirit, the soul, like all of our multidimensional support and aspects. And then from there, how much resource do we have to create with, and also to just like enjoy life more? Like, that's why I'm here. I've created a lot in my life. It's been really fun. I've worked really hard. I've went down that whole rabbit hole, and more my guidance. And I wonder if this is also what you're tapping into. It's like, it's time to enjoy and be more embodied and feel more all that's available to feel, and really come into more presence and let our creation arise from this more like present, present space and present way of being. It's a very different way of creating that's not, it's not working so hard. It's different, it's a very different like rhythm and pacing of living and being a leader.
Hmm. Yes, I couldn't agree more. And I definitely have I'm curious after hearing you speak also what your human design makeup is, because that rhythm I found when I tuned into mine
Mm.
as a manifester, I
Oh.
realized that I was working and charging ahead in a similar programming as a generator that would exhaust me and burn me out. And I've
Mm.
often said that I am the most productive laying down with my eyes closed,
Yeah.
because as a visionary, how much comes in that space.
I love this. Yeah, I'm super connected to that. So human design, as I really relate to it, was gifted by the Palladians, and I'm very strongly connected with that council. They also gave a lot of the insight behind gene keys and kind of downloaded, these two, Richard Rudd and Ra, and just I love this system. I was just speaking with a friend about it. It's a big part of my work, and when I coach, or mentor visionaries, it's like let's get clear on your energy system because most of the world is conditioned to be a generator. Because most of the world, it's like 80%. I'm a generator. I'm a like pure
Mhm.
generator, sacral authority, and 4-6 prof. We could go deep into it, but not everybody is actually meant to really work. Like I love to work when I'm in the flow of doing what I love, what turns me on, what activates my sacral, authority. But I love to hang out with manifestors like you because you're just like a magnetic field for creation, and you're in your genius when you're receiving, and you're in excitement, and you're in like what is really turning you on, and just playing in the vision and the imagination. And then we can be like a great team because I can also give ideas and we can be visioning together. But then you're like amplifying this field of potential of just like letting everything come in to support and attracting all the resources. And I love manifestors.
Well, I'm happy to hear that. I actually had a deep dive with some friends this weekend with the human design book, and we were going through it,
Oh.
and we were kind of giggling at like the trials that it is to be being a manifestor is really kind of weird, because I feel like in human design there's like a weird pedestal that some of the things, and I think that's kind of one of the shadows is how the ego relates to some of the things in human design. But for myself, in learning about the qualities of a manifestor, it gave me permission to exist already as I naturally am,
Yeah.
without trying to like do the work to restructure myself into that of a generator.
Mhm.
And one of the things that I've also learned is the attraction, the magnetism, and also the repel. That
Yeah.
there's a repelling that manifestors do, and it's almost like resting bitch face, but energetically, but like not knowing it. And so there was, through my life, there was that desire to be liked and be attractive and be that whole thing, I think, as we do growing up just by our natural
Mhm.
needs. And then learning also that there's just certain like mismatches or incompatibilities, and it has absolutely nothing to do with personal stuff at all. It's just simply like a
Mhm.
frequent, almost like magnets, where some attract and some just
Mhm.
go the other direction if it's flipped the other way.
Mhm.
I love though that you're also 4-6. I'm 4-6, which would also
Cool.
like show why we have a lot of those overlaps. And I do want to
Mhm.
get to that, but there's something that just keeps pinging that I want to speak to, because
Mhm.
you dove right into the Atlantean connections. I started remembering my Atlantean lives. I got really into Edgar Casey in my early
Yeah,
20s.
I love him.
I
Cool.
I yes, absolutely incredible. And so I'm just going to give a summary and kind of explain this a little bit. So Edgar Casey did over 8,000 readings. He had a stenographer, somebody that was writing all the readings down as they were happening. Well, all of those readings has gone into a database. There are now people who have access to those, and I don't know what the protocol is for them to be able to have access to them. But what they've done in this specific example that I'm going to share is that they took every single excerpt that had anything to do with Atlantis. And what they did was they puzzle pieced it together to create a chronological history, a written chronological
Mhm.
history of Atlantis. I read that when I was, I think, maybe 21 or 22, and got really curious and started opening and asking spirit to bring me people whose Atlantean lifetimes I could read. That curiosity started to get really big. What I want to specifically highlight is that in the last year or so, for myself personally, as I'm growing my business, and as I believe that growing your soul centered business is one of the most spiritual things you can do, because it leaves no stone unturned. And this is the example that I'm going to use for that as well. Um, what I really dove into this last year is clearing the patterns of failure. And it's not
Mm,
just a failure in this lifetime, but for those of us that were alive during the fall of Atlantis, during the fall of Rome, during the fall of what some may say the planet of Tara, like during the fall of these ancient civilizations, and where there has been guilt or self punishment. I feel that we have an opportunity today to help our listeners also clear those past
mm.
patterns, because they have been quite alive from what I have seen in the collective field in this last year.
It's all right here. Yeah, you just called it all in. I'm getting a big download. This is what we need to be clearing completely to create what we're really here to create in this life, without any distortion, without any repetition of what we know really doesn't work. And in connection with the worthiness piece, well, failure, it's actually a healing around worthiness as well. I find they're saying it's like very connected to really coming into our understanding of true value, our infinite inherent value, and feeling worthy to create and bring forth the vision that comes through us to create, that we're really worthy of this vision, that there's a lot of trauma from these other timelines that you express that. And even if they're saying right now, even if you weren't there, you have a collective memory. It's in the collective field. It's in our cellular memory just by being alive on the planet now. And it's something that we're here to alchemize fully. And just, it's kind of like they say, complete the contracts. Like there's like some, like almost like a static or echo of like, there's a soul contract. I have to be like loyal to this agreement. And you don't, you're free. You have free will. You can create in a completely open, free field now. And it's just, we're dealing with so much ancestral inheritance as well, and so much about worthiness, like our generation, especially. It's like, we're really repatterning at such a deep level our DNA around worthiness, and really being worthy of the love, the presence, the vision, the creativity, the power, part of also healing that wound of feeling like we're responsible for this massive failure and the, death of many people, thousands of people, millions of people, that we were responsible for that at some level. It's like healing and releasing the shame associated with that as well, and really forgiving. I love that you actually, in our invocation before we started this, you spoke about forgiveness and compassion. It's like, that's the energy we're really meant to tune in with now, really a deep forgiveness, and for ourselves. And I say this in my book, I have a whole chapter. It's like, forgive yourself and forgive yourself some more. Like, it's like we are just called to forgive ourselves. We don't even need anybody else to like give us forgiveness. It's like, I've just been doing so much like ho'oponopono forgiveness work with my family, with myself, just like letting it go. And all the guides lately, all the ancestors at this site I was at yesterday, they're like so direct. They're like, let it all go. Like, let it all go. We're not meant to carry anything. They don't want us to carry anything. These subconscious loyalties we have of carrying the patterns, carrying the trauma, to say at some level, it's okay, what you did wasn't bad. I'm going to keep doing it and validate it. And you're not bad because I'm going to do it too. They don't want us. The ancestors do not want us to do this. It's like an old program, and we get to just
Mhm.
pass it back and empty out. And then we're learning to be safe and like secure, to have like capacity, to be powerful. It can be so terrifying. I love this paradox of being human. Like, why are we so afraid of being powerful? I just love that. Like, why?
Well, yeah, can we answer that? I
Yeah.
would like to actually, like, I'm a why investigator. I have to know the why before I do anything, before I initiate, like, it for me, if the why makes sense, I'll go to the end of the world. If the why doesn't make sense, no, we're backtracking, we're getting ice cream. Like, it's just not gonna happen. But this theme around power, and I specifically recently have been surrounded by incredibly powerful human beings, And I think my deepest sadness around being a human and watching humans self-sabotage is it's the trying to comprehend and understand why humans are running so far away from their power and why that piece is there. So, do you
Mhm.
have any explorations or maybe explanations as to why you have seen, or if there's a pattern as to why you've seen maybe yourself or your clients or people around you that are choosing to sabotage their power rather than to fully step into it?
Yeah, it's been the core theme of my entire life. So
Mhm.
I wrote a giant book about this pretty much, but it's a big facet of my life purpose, my soul path is to understand, really to understand unconditional love, but also through the lens of right relationship to power and to being fully alive, So I say we only really understand our power by giving it away first, by learning through contrast what it's like to be codependent or to be in a narcissist dynamic or to, externalize our value or whatever it may be, whatever game, and so many of us have so many of these things in common. We're all kind of like we're learning as these souls came into earth, forget everything from all the other lifetimes, and just learn there's so much contrast and pain, the opposite of what we really are. And so, wow. Yeah, my experience has been really through the lens of like a nervous system lens of like, I, was born into a family where I didn't have any attunement to what a healthy nervous system feels like, which also led to the development of a lot of psychic gifts and abilities, through the trauma of abandonment and neglect and chaos and addiction and things I needed to blast out to the 12th dimension as a child because my home life was insane and I didn't want to be there. So I developed this really strong relationship with the cosmic consciousness, and I didn't know it at the time. I was just surviving, right? It was survival. And yet our greatest traumas, they give way to our most amazing gifts when we learn to really transmute the energy. And so, but, growing up in that way, I had to learn at some point once I had a really rock bottom, a wake up call awakening, it's like, oh, I need to build a nervous system. Like I can't actually even contain the energy of my true self or like energy in my body. It's too much. I would be fried. I would be so overwhelmed by the amount of psychic data I would be receiving. I would be, kind of in the empathic overwhelm of just absorbing everyone's energy around me. I just was so anxious and disassociated. It was way too much to be in a body. I couldn't even deal with it. I didn't know how. And then I realized like, oh yeah, after many years, and there's a critical moment actually. Maybe some people relate, maybe you relate. Like I I had this huge vision. I had this pristine vision given to me to create this convergence of visionary leaders from all over the world. And it was like, we need to come together for 4 days and we need to practice self-mastery and coherence. And we need to actually really connect and like transmute all this shadow energy and competition and hierarchy and all this old programming. We need to like be embodied and be in presence. And then we can talk about what new things we want to be building in this world. We can't create more new things with an old operating system that's powering the vision. We just can't. And so I created this huge event. It was like biggest investment of my whole life. And 100 people came, and it was like, it was this amazing initiation. That's why it's coming in. I also simulated kind of through that experience, a fall of Atlantis type level failure for me, because I had to bring up a lot of those repressed energies and traumas, and also that like kind of shame of letting everyone down, like the vision as I had planned it in its perfection it was never going to be delivered at that level of perfection I held it to. And at the end of that event, I thought I was going to leave having created this huge company and like have all these visionary like trainings and embodiment accelerators and all these things. But at the end of it, it was like, I made a commitment to that whole group at the end. And I was like, I promise to build a nervous system and a body that can contain the energy that I meant to channel in this life. That was it. It was like, and then that was the next 3 years living in Hawaii was like healing my nervous system. And I came to understand that power is our life force. It's our life force energy. It's our authenticity. It's our presence. It's the most important thing that we have as long as we're alive and conscious. And we have a personal responsibility to build a healthy nervous system, a body, an energy field that can actually be a container for our authenticity, then our soul purpose, our creation to land in this dimension. And it just changed my whole trajectory of my life, which prior to then had been very external, like this looks good, this sounds good, people like it, just very external. I could see the architecture, I could build amazing things in the world, but it was missing. Everything needed more embodiment. It needed more grounding in this dimension. It needed more power, and it needed a container through the body to contain the energy, to contain the power. And so that's really our initiation at hand right now. I think for all of us, to be really embodied leaders, to be really responsible for our energy, our nervous systems, and to understand like power is our life force. It's our most precious currency beyond anything. And it's powering everything in our lives. And how much of a container are we in our body, in our field, to really bring through and stabilize consistently the amount of power, the amount of energy, vibrancy, magnetism, vision, that we're meant to be anchoring now.
Yes, thank you so much for sharing all that you did. There's so many layers and facets in what you have just shared. So I'm still just like receiving, yes, the words and the in-between words. I can feel it so strong. It's such a strong field. And I would also similarly, as we mentioned, being that mirror, I learned so much about power by having mine in a non-consensual way stripped from me, and then finding like that value of worthlessness and subconscious worthlessness, attracting the cycle that would recreate powerless dynamics, and on and on. And similarly, it's funny that we talk about like us being afraid of our greatest light, or our fear being more scary than failure, and failure being familiar. We know the outcome. We know what's going to happen. It doesn't feel good. It's not exactly what we want to experience it, but because we know what it is what is familiar. So it's oftentimes what that subconscious pattern will recreate because we know the system. So when we are identifying within ourselves that power within, and that power within that I believe is part of our birthright and ascension, and ultimately why it is that we are here, which is, so it's like the haha cosmic nonsense joke as to like, why are we running so far away from it, doing everything we can to not step into our power, when ultimately I do believe that for a majority of us, especially visionaries, and especially those who have volunteered from other interplanetary locations to be on this planet at this time, and if you've never heard that before, but you're feeling a ping, I encourage you to lean in. that spaciousness,
You are
right?
welcome here.
Yeah, exactly. You have found your people. Is that internal place of that power that is desiring. It's like the heart's deepest desire is to be able to be fully free in its expression. And a huge part of that is to be fully free in its expression of power, which means the ego must surrender to that expression of that divinity within, which is the power. Now, what I believe is a huge like social construct of the codependency that's just baked into the bedrock, I'll just say, of American society, because I know it so well, is that if a person inside a social community decides is a loose term, because awakening and remembering, you don't really decide, it decides you, and it just starts showing up. But let's say a person decides to start rising above that base frequency, that community, and let's say it's like 10 people, let's just use a simple example, that there's a community of 10 people that are choosing to numb out together, that are choosing to placate their wounds together, that are choosing to be victims together, that are choosing to be martyrs together, whatever that social structure or that trauma bond is, that when one starts raising the tides, the other ones will start to feel the mirror of that, because they're interconnected, and start to kind of kick and scream or throw a tantrum or try to put that person back into the box. And so when we're talking about even let's say sobriety, or choosing not to drink, or choosing to fast, or choosing to change your diet, whatever that is, it starts to hold up a mirror
Mm.
of what others can do for themselves, and whether they want to choose to step into their power, or try to take the power away from the other person by bringing them back down to their level.
Mm.
And so to speak to this kind of inner dynamic of how we influence each other, and taking into consideration the people, the time and the people, because there's more and more science coming out also that's showing the transference of energy through brainwaves, and the transference of energy through capabilities. That
Mhm.
if you're working with somebody that is working at a higher level of productivity, or a higher level of creativity than you are, it will actually boost yours by about 25%. And
Mhm.
so you will be about 25% more creative than you would be had you been working alone. So if we take that into consideration, and also look at different frequencies of where people are operating as their base, we do recognize that we become that base sum. So I
Mm.
want to speak to that, because in my spaces of awakening, and choosing to rise, that is one of the things that I have found to be the hardest thing as to why I would have
Mm.
stalled or chosen not to fully step into my power. And
Oh,
it's
yeah.
like the Maslow's hierarchy of needs to fit in. So can you speak to that, and what that experience has been for yourself and others as well?
During my life, yeah. Talk about human design, gene key. I mean, just all of it. My soul is here to blaze a new trail. So, like, fundamentally, I'm here to be comfortable with being excommunicated from the tribe.
Hmm.
But my life has been set up, my family dynamic, my social context, all of it. It's like it's all about belonging to the tribe. Like all of my core wounds, abandonment, the anecdote is belonging to the tribe, being a part of, being seen, being validated by others. It's just, it's all set up so perfectly.
Hmm.
And it's the greatest challenge. It's the greatest challenge. It's the greatest initiation again and again to say what you're here to say, regardless of what anyone else is going to think, or if they're going to understand, or if they're going to burn you on the stake again, or whatever is, in the field. And I just went through this with my book. My book, it's all about healing trauma. I speak about my childhood and growing up with alcoholism in my home, and many generations of my lineage. And just, I speak about it from the perspective of how that impacted my nervous system development, and that you can heal. You can heal. I've done it. Here's how you can do it. And I speak about it in an empowering way, and also with gratitude. Like, I'm so grateful. I know I chose the perfect family to like initiate me into my path. And yet, although this is not new information because I've been teaching this for 10 years, somehow, to your point, my family just now, because I think I did a big frequency shift recently. I went through a really dark night the last month. It was big, big rebirth. And that
Hmm.
impacts our family field, especially. Talk about mirror neurons, right? Like you're kind of tuning in with that transference fields. We have our family biological field. And when we go through updates and upgrades, it is reverberating through the whole family. It's reverberating through the whole human family, the collective. But we sometimes often see most closely how our changes affect our biological family. And somehow, some way, my parents and my brother now too got just very upset by this book, which again, none of it's new information, but it's triggering in them. I think because I have had a deeper level of acceptance and forgiveness and healing take place about the reality of my situation, that energy is now transferring to them. And they're sitting with whether or not they want to accept it. Right now, they're like in this resistance. None of this is happening consciously, right? They're just like, no, this hurts, victim. And it will take time. I have faith it will take time. But in a way, it's this, I was excommunicated from the tribe. And this is what happens when we're visionaries and we're here to literally bring through new consciousness onto this planet. And most visionaries, actually, we share. I find, because these are all the people I like to hang out with and work with and support. These are my people. It's like I find we tend to have similar traumas in common too, where we get set up to be a visionary. We tend to come from chaotic, tumultuous, very traumatic homes where we saw, like, wait a minute, this isn't the world I signed up for. And we start looking like, wait a minute, things could be different. Things should be different. Like, what would that look like? And we develop these multidimensional abilities unconsciously at first. And we develop these amazing imagination, capacities to create imaginary worlds to escape to. But again, these are all superpowers. These are like part of our essence of being able to architect something really new that's never hit this planet before, and to be able to articulate it, and also at some level enroll other people in it. Like, we need someone here to keep evolution moving along. If the mass consciousness is still in that loop-de-loop of, like, well, even though I don't like the way things are, I know how it's going to play out if I keep doing the same thing over and over and over again. Even though it's not what I want, it's safe. And that's what my nervous system can deal with. So they just, keep Groundhog Day. Like, I understand. I played that game too. But then you awaken and you're like, wait a minute, there's more. Why am I really alive? Why am I really here? And, part of the planet, there are these visionary leaders, and the greatest challenge in really fully embodying, continuing to deepen in that embodiment of being a visionary leader, it has to do with becoming really comfortable with owning your power, with being, I would just simplify it to say that term is used all the time. Like, what the hell does owning your power mean? Or like stepping into your power. I just say, like, be fully alive. Be fully alive. Be tuned in to what you are alive for. Why are you living? What is your desire? That's how your power comes through. What are you really here for? What do you really want? And then that's a whole other healing of like understanding, what do you actually want? What do you actually need? If you learned your whole life to look at what everyone else wants and what everyone else needs and build whole companies in response to that, instead of like really being integrated in also your desires and your needs, and really putting yourself first, taking care of yourself, being that really whole and complete and stable, self-loving, fully magnetic, just supported, resourced, worthy, valuable, just knowing, deeply trusting in your knowing, and letting your desire, really guide you. And intuitively too, that's when we're tuning with our desire. That's when we're most in contact with our intuition. It's like designed to help us deliver our desires. And that's where our most potent creation is born. That's where we just get fully activated. All of our powers come online. Our sexual energy, our life force is just flowing. We're magnetic. We're very clear and discerning. What is a yes? What is a no? Who's meant to be in our field? We're attracting the right resources, the right opportunities. So that's what I'm continuously deepening in my path. And it may not be for everybody, but I know it's part of the visionary path that we're templating, is like, what is it like to be fully alive? And an example of someone that is fully alive and fully vital and fully radiant and fully speaking their truth in a society that was literally built contrary to all of that. Contrary, like our society was structured to like create workers and slaves, essentially, and people that are, cogs in a wheel in a system that is full of institutionalized repression and disempowerment and repression of your life force and desire, and has really been designed to keep you, I think, to keep us contained in a very limited intellectual, mental oriented way of being, where it's easy to be told what to do and follow the leader. And there's a lot of fear instilled collectively in being excommunicated from the tribe, right? It's like from a survival basis, from like, the days when we were hunter-gatherer, it's like we needed the tribe. We needed the tribe to provide food, and we depended on the tribe in more ways. And it's kind of weird, actually, what's coming through now. It's like, in a way, we're also returning to some of the original tribal ways of being, which are really healthy, like more family connection, community connection with the earth and the elements. And we're maybe clearing the distorted ways in which the tribe like has that concept has evolved over the last, like, what is it, 1,000 years or something, where it's like belonging and like, being more like homogenous and like kind of in this, it feels very connected to capitalism when I think about it, that whole like indoctrination and conditioning. And we're evolving out of it because it really, the way that things have been running, it's not working. It's not working in the way that we need. It's not the world that is so contingent, the business world. We were talking about this last night. It's like, it's just got to shift. We're here to connect more with each other, with the planet, with natural resources, with spirit. We're not meant to just be running in the system that's built for infinite growth, 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 more revenue. Like so many of the systems are just architected that way. And it's so disconnected from reality of like being alive, being humans, having seasons, having natural resources, being connected with nature, being connected with spirit, you know? So it's just a really fascinating time to be alive. I don't know if I answered your question at all, but these are the things I love to riff about forever.
Mhm. No, I hear you completely, and you absolutely did. And one of the things that I think is interesting, because as I'm hearing you, of course, there are mirrors. A huge part of my upbringing, I have I have two stepsisters. I have a half brother and a half sister, and then I also have a half brother. I'm the only product of my parents, so my whole upbringing has been um, just kind of like a solo island in this. So it's like, yes, being part of the tribe, but also not being part of the tribe. And so, similar to what you're saying, it's like the abandonment and also like my own choice to know, like just knowing that some of the things that were going on just weren't for me. And it didn't always have to be like trauma and abuse and all that. It was just like, this is just this general feeling of, I don't belong here. There's somewhere else that I belong. I love, there's big, huge, giant love here, but also there's something else going on. And I really do think that this is also attributed to the 4-6, because the 4 in human design representing community and gathering and building a network, building that sort of thing, like you're saying, having 100 visionaries show up to your event. It's that building. And then the 6 also being attributed to, and I haven't looked super deep into this, but the 6 having a challenging life path up until about 30 years old, and learning, deep diving, learning those lessons to be able to be the teacher. So it's like the community and the teacher, which similarly, I often get challenged in community, simply because eventually, if I'm outspoken and I'm shining a light and I'm saying this is who I am and these are the abilities that I have, if I don't say anything like that, I can fit in and kind of go with the status quo. Once I start speaking to that, I become the person that people come to guidance, and I get put kind of like on a pedestal, and just it's not necessarily an ostracization, but it's still like a bit of a separation. And so it's interesting because I have felt that kind of life dynamic unfolding as well, and especially in knowing my soul calling is to be a leader, and knowing my soul calling is to be a teacher. It's to be like, I feel more at home on stage with a microphone in my hand than anywhere else. And then simultaneously that internal need and desire for social interaction and also to fit in. It's like this constant kind of funny wave thing around what is power, how do we embody it, and how do we stay in integrity with that at all times. Whether I'm shooting pool, because I absolutely love to play pool, like shooting pool in a dive bar, or if I'm on stage speaking, to these higher dimensional truths and awakening people to their Atlantean past lives, or it's like, how far the spectrum can go. And can we be in integrity in our power in all environments that creates that kind of internal wholeness and also internal self-reliance and confidence in knowing who we are at all times. And that for me has been like, I'll say a haha fun kind of oscillation between how do I want to show up at all points, in all times, in all circles. And one of the things that you said that I saw a vision of was about tribe, and going back to like ancient practices around tribe, and then seeing now, like, how many tribes are we actually a part of now? That it's not just one tribe anymore. It's like we can be an integral member of, 7 or 8 or even sometimes like 15 different tribes or communities where we're playing a specific role. And I think that's part of where the quickening of humanity is coming into place, that instead of being one person in one tribe and one role, and that's who we are for the complete duration of our life, it's these different facets where we're learning almost on hyperspeed. We're like going through the evolution of 5 or 6 lifetimes in one lifetime now. And
in
I
a
do
day.
believe every day. Yeah, every day. Last week, someone was like, how's your week going? I'm like, honestly, it's one of those weeks that I feel like 3 weeks has happened. Someone
Yeah.
asked me how I was at the end of the day, and I said, I feel like my heart lived through a lifetime because I watched my heart live through an entire timeline. It was
Yeah.
an entire possibility with somebody else, and I watched my heart live all the way through that and complete it in a day.
Mhm.
And I, that quickening is just happening so fast. And our
Mhm.
choices, timelines are choices. That's how I simplify it. It's like we can get all like woo woo into the quantum field and the wow timelines, but really what it comes down to is it's what are we choosing? And how are we seeing that choice for ourselves? So if we're choosing our highest timeline, if we're choosing our highest power, then it comes down to at every moment, are we choosing the best food choice? Are we choosing to drink enough water through the day? Are we choosing to get enough rest? I was like going back to the basics because it simplifies things.
It's really nice and grounding.
Right? It's just that's all it really comes down to is what are
Yeah.
we choosing and how are we choosing it? And again, I like the why. Why are we choosing that? That's going to encourage our power.
Thank you. Yeah, I love the simplicity too. And my guides are always like, it's just simple, like it's just simple, so simple. The truths we're after are so simple. Sometimes they don't even need words. And our power is something you feel. Like you feel someone when they're in their power, they're like, you just feel it. It feels good. And my curiosity is, and this is my prayer for like that thing I did in 2019, that convergence called Odyssey. It was an Odyssey for sure, hero's journey. And I think now I'm actually like, I could like do that again. Something like that is birthing through some kind of similar convergence because we're in all the tribes and so many of these are digital and virtual, and there's a power that happens when we are in physicality and proximity and our fields are doing the transference and physical. We can do it on Zoom and in transmissions like this, totally, but it's on a whole other level when we're in person. And it's like I just have a curiosity, like what's it like when really powerful beings get together and we're just really powerful beings together and we're embodied as ourselves and we're not playing any games of comparison, competition. There's no hidden agendas, there's no pedestaling, and we're fully radiating our light, our gifts. This is the thing, when we're actually really embodying our authenticity, we're fully unique. Like we're each such a unique frequency. And when we have a group of us together and we're all embodying that uniqueness and radiating our light and not holding anything back, and we're so anchored and grounded in our wholeness, and we're safe and we're secure in being powerful being, we have a unique piece of the puzzle, each of us. And then what do we create? I have chills. It's like, that's like what I want to do. Like, that's why I'm alive. I want to do that. And it's not me building in my echo chamber, building the company, blah, 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 all these things. I do really love being alone. I love that. I love writing books and just being in these like creative caves. And I love that. But we're here to be in relationship. And like my greatest growing edge has been people pleasing, all the abandonment trauma stuff, validation seeking, fitting in, all this stuff. And it's the counter, it's the opposite of my purpose. And I only can transmute these energies fully in relationship with other people, and not just anybody, but with other powerful leaders, with other powerful mirrors, with other visionaries. But guess what? We're designed to trigger the shit out of each other. We're designed to do it because we're going to like mirror, they're doing the thing that it's like, I'm not doing that. And it's going to bring up stuff that I can't see. I can't see myself. As psychic as I am and as accurate as I can be reading anybody else, I can't do that for myself. I just can't. We can't see ourselves. And so I just love that this is coming up in our conversation because I feel really connected to that inner fire that I have that's like to create. And it's one of my gifts, like to create, I think for you too. And maybe we're supposed to collaborate on something like creating the
I'm
space.
feeling that big time right now,
Yeah,
to be
the
honest.
convergence is, and it's important too that the people that do it, because I see a lot of people host a lot of events and retreats and things, and they have the great vision. And this is what I did in 2019. I had the great vision. I enrolled all these people. I did the great marketing and business plan and blah, 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 and raised all the money. But my embodiment, and it was all perfect, and it changed so many people's lives. And people still tell me, oh my God, my life-changing experience, and companies were formed, and it was all divine. And it wasn't about me, actually. But now I'm like, whoa, okay, there's like more embodiment here and presence, and I feel more comfortable in myself. And like, I want to create a convergence and convergences and gatherings where we're coming together intentionally with the purpose of alchemizing our wounding and these just distractions and practicing. It's almost like training. It's like Jedi training. Like, how can I really be embodied as myself in my power in the presence of other really powerful beings that, and we have this acknowledgement, we're going to trigger each other, but we're also resourced and we can like do this work together and like, let's have fun also. Let's like have the intention of we want to create something new. We want to like experiment with like once we get all the energy and the emotional stuff, we're cleaning, alchemizing that. It's like what new visions want to come through and how can we really work in a team in a new way? I know that's why we're here. And we're
Mhm.
just learning like how to actually do that outside of all the weird conditioning of hierarchy and the pedestaling and just kind of these more, I would say, immature ways of relating that is just the way we're taught, being born on this planet. We're taught a lot of really unhealthy, codependent, immature relating dynamics, if we're taught anything at all about relating, and so we have to like practice and remember these things together.
Mhm. Yes, I could not agree more. And I mean, this is where like crypto and the whole world of like leading edge of
Mhm.
technology and what I am calling the digital revolution that we're living in now,
Mhm.
the whole it's like the whole foundation of why crypto and why crypto companies are being formed the way that they're formed is a DAO, a decentralized autonomous organization. That means no C-level suites. That
Mhm.
means no one really in charge as a leader. Yes, people can have a greater stake in the tokens and that sort of thing. But ultimately, it's an interesting sort of way that these communities are working towards breaking down the patriarchal system and birthing a new one
Mhm.
with a lot of trial and error. It's not like, okay, this is the old one and this is how it's going to work. There's so much of like, okay, let's like there will be some stubbed toes and there will be some hard feelings and there will be some, and I'm just talking blanket generalization across the population of people who are leading edge creating these decentralized autonomous organizations and seeing how it is because ultimately there are going to be leaders in the field that spearhead the ideas that is their sole birthright and their sole purpose to do so. And it's how do we create organizations in a way where I don't know about you. I don't personally like being pedestaled. I like being listened to as a teacher and as a leader because that is my sole purpose and I see incredible things happen in people's field when I am leading. And that's taken me years
Mhm.
to cultivate and comprehend and understand. And simultaneously, I'm not a huge fan of the pedestaling. I don't like the separation that it creates. I'll often do things that,
Disempowering. It's disempowering, but it's also a reflection of people's like innate their unworthiness or their I'm not enough. And it's that whole thing of like, no, we're all powerful. And the best
yeah,
teachers, I think now it's like, I'm here to just help you be your own teacher too. Like
yes,
I'm like, I have some things to share, but it's really to help you remember that you
yes,
have things to share too.
yes. Completely, completely. Well, I feel like we could do this at least 5 or 6 more times minimum. I mean, come on. There's so many things that we've just barely touched on here that I would have loved to go into a full other hour-long discussion, even specifically just in the Atlantean times, because it is rare that I meet somebody that wants to be recorded as we share this kind of information with people, right? I've found the Atlantean people, but not often are they also spearheading a movement and sharing their calling in the way that you are. And so I really honor you for that. I know what it takes to be the goose in the headwind. I know what it takes to, find those ideas and really just encourage them and birth them to the nth degree. And I honor you in hearing what you're saying about your family and writing that book and getting that out there. I know also from firsthand, those experiences are just, they're not easy. And so I see you, I hear you, I thank you for the healing energy that you've brought into this container. I've felt so much energy moving through my whole body as we have been talking. So for that as well, thank you so much. Is there
Aw.
anything else that you would like to share as a closing thought before we close this out?
I'm just burning up over here in the best way, like I love hanging out and we're really alchemizing so much in real
So
time. So
much.
it's like a sauna over here. And thank you for your beautiful acknowledgement, facilitation, openness. I feel like we're going to be collaborating on some really cool things. I feel like they're just going to land. I'm really celebrating just how much has kind of percolated in this field. And I'm so grateful to be a part of this. Thank you.
Yes. And the feeling is very much mutual. I'm with you, so we'll see how those conversations unfold, knowing that we are completely divinely guided. We'll have your people call my people, and I'm sure we'll line it all up for
So
us. I do want to share a little bit because we do have some goodies in the description below. Sydney has just recently or is launching a book called I'm Ascending Now What? If you've enjoyed this conversation, and obviously I'm sure her voice and her personality is in there, I would put money on it that it's one of those books that you read a paragraph and you have to put down and process because of how much information it starts opening up inside of you. Given this conversation, I'm sure it's going to be one of those.
that
um, would you like to share anything about your book?
was perfect. No one's described it like that. I think that's right on. It's a huge initiation. I went through it's just a birthing process. And I got to record the audiobook a couple weeks ago, which was so challenging. I never did anything like that. It was crazy to do that. So the audiobook's probably a gnarly transmission because you get my vocal encodement of really,
Mhm,
going through the integration of the book, which is a lot of my life story, crazy experiences you would never imagine ever.
mhm.
And healing, like how to really own your power, embody your true self, and live your purpose and just really live, be fully alive. And so, yeah, I'm so grateful that's going to be out in the world. And I think meeting a lot of people right where they're at when they're really ready.
I can feel that with the Great Awakening and where people are right now questioning like what's going on in the world and looking for those answers. It does sound like that book is going to be like a perfectly timed resource for many.
Yes.
So, with that being said, if you are interested, not even if you're interested, go ahead and connect with
So
Sydney.
cute.
Yeah, we've got a freebie gift available for you to connect so that you can just tap into what it is that she is sharing, as well as a course that is available. You're welcome to tap into that as well. Just go ahead and take a look in the description here below, and you'll have all the information that you need there. And Sydney, I just want to again say thank you
Aw.
so much and send a big, just etheric quantum high five to both of our teams for putting this together and lining us up. Of course, divinely aligned, divine appointment. So thank you. I honor you. I see you. And I'm looking forward to doing this again soon.
Thank you. And thank you, everybody, for listening. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes. All right. Have a beautiful day.